Speaking of, I guess, material that has no fashion in it, of fashion. Doesn't have any fashion. Doesn't have any passion in it, though. That's what I meant to say. Seriously, though, there was a story that I stumbled across. I was abounding in the comics that kind of brought it to light as well, and I wanted to speak on this. And I think it really taps you into the mind of a lot of why the direction of American material has gone in the direction that it's gone in. People talk about the social justice element of it, and the focus and the hyperemphasis and the stuff being injected in seemingly everything, and the stuff being put into places specifically to signal they have no meaning there other than the people that were part of that project wanted it in there, right? It doesn't even serve any purpose, just like gay stuff that they just throw in there. Has no purpose in advancing the storyline or anything. It's just there just to be there because, well, they want to make sure that this stuff is authorized. And some of the language or rhetoric that Tessa Thompson, who can't act her way out of a paper sack, or rather she plays the same character in every single movie it is that she acts in with the same damn face. And she is tokenized Valkyrie, which makes no sense, by the way. If you have an issue with white Wakandans, you should have an issue with black as guardians. Makes absolutely no sense that those exist, considering it's Norse mythology and what it is based on. But for some reason, there is this biracial light-skinned Valkyrie. Doesn't make any sort of sense, and I've been talking about that for a while. And yes, that includes your beloved Idris Elba. With that being said, though, she, of course, had been pushing, because I think she herself is bisexual, if I'm not mistaken, but she had been, and we've heard about this before, really pushing for the emphasis of her Valkyrie's gayness, right? They wanted that to really be shown and emphasized. Now, if they've been successful is one thing, but you have to understand, like, to act like this isn't, if any influence, definitely when you consider the direction that a lot of these companies have gone, this is exactly what it is. It's these individuals injecting their own personal social political views onto the whatever exists. That's all that it is. Like, I want these people to validate me, and I need this material to validate myself and people like me. So that's what we need to do. So according to Tessa Thompson, she and Taika Waititi, who is a director, which I don't understand how he keeps getting gigs, because to me, he's not any good. But, you know, what they art is, I guess, in the eye of the beholder. And then she talked about how they spent a lot of time speaking about her sexuality. Thompson opened up about these conversations regarding Valkyrie's LGBT plus identity during a recent interview with Yahoo Entertainment published on the 29th, telling the news outlet, we talked a lot about it. It was a big topic of conversation. Why? Now, again, whether that's successful is one thing, but why is this it's a character that isn't you, that already has this established set of lore. If you're talking about Brunhild Valkyrie, we know that there's Valkyries, but who Marvel considers like the Valkyrie, or goes, but generally going by the names in Brunhild, and she is not gay. There are gay as guardians that do exist in Marvel as well. That exists. However, she's not one of them, historically speaking. However, that doesn't change the fact that Tessa Thompson wants that to be the case. And here we are. That bisexuality or being a member of the LGBT lettuce, guacamole, and bacon tomato group. She says, because I think rightfully there's this real want and audience to see characters be very clearly queer. Wait a minute. I'm going to read that again. I know I kind of stumbled through that. This is what she said. Because I think rightfully there's this real want in audiences to see characters be very or clearly queer or LGBTQIA inside these spaces. The actress, who is bisexual herself, okay, so she is bisexual, and I think it's hugely important to have representation. Almost caught myself there. Now that narcolepsy almost got me. So let me speak on that. What audiences? Audiences that aren't really into this stuff. Audiences that are bozos that think that movies are supposed to validate themselves and their existence. Like, who? Want in audiences, like what? Like, by audiences, do you mean like 4 or 5 people on Twitter? Is that what you mean? Like, who is like, we really need to see this queer stuff play out on screen? Who is saying that other than maybe some Twitter weirdos who, again, they're not actually interested in this stuff anyway. They just want their ideas validated. That's it. They want other people to validate their existence. And it's also spite. They like to get under the skin of people that they consider their ideological enemies. She continued, and also humans, I think, or as humans, I think that we are not defined by our sexuality. Then why on earth are you talking about real audiences wanting to see that and it being important representation if people are not defined by their sexuality, Tessa Thompson? And sometimes I think to hang a narrative completely on that is a way of actually diminishing the humanity of the character. Well, I agree on that 100%, Tessa. I agree with that statement right there. I agree with that 100%. Because you don't allow them to be anything. I agree with that. I 100% agree. So if nothing else, you got that part right. It just contradicts with the statement you just made before. But I agree. I 100% agree with that assessment. However, despite the special care and attention given to the subject by both Waititi and herself, Thompson revealed that the film ultimately spends no time exploring Valkyrie's love. Well, that's a positive for it. It becomes the only storyline. It says, noting that when a character's sexuality is brought to the spotlight, it becomes the only storyline. Thompson asserted that this rang true, particularly in a movie like this where we don't, frankly, have a lot of room for storyline. Again, that's not a bad thing. So there was a lot of conversation in terms of how to treat that with Valkyrie, and I feel real good personally about where we got to. I hope that she's a character that fans continue to connect to, that we have a lot of time to explore her in all her humanity. But whether or not she finds love in this movie doesn't mean she's still not a fabulous queer character. Well, she's not. She's never been. And just because you want her to be, because you yourself are bisexual, that's what we call self-insert, Tessa Thompson. Brunetta is not homosexual or bisexual. Interestingly, this is the part where it gets interesting for sure. A variation of this explanation was reportedly given by Waititi to Thompson during the filming of Thor Ragnarok as to why a scene which would have provided explicit on-screen confirmation of Valkyrie's bisexuality rather than leaving the fact for the film's cast and crew to pronounce in interviews. So it's one of those things like, well, do we show them that or do we just tell them that? Because we can't show them that, or they can, but they just have not. But they said it was left on the cutting room floor. Thompson even summoned the courage to pitch Waititi on making Valkyrie bisexual. So it was her. It's a self-insert. That's literally what it was, a self-insert. She convinced Waititi to shoot a glimpse of a woman walking out of Valkyrie's bedroom. He kept it in the film as long as he could. Eventually, the bit had to be cut because it distracted from the scene's vital exposition. So, she just to recap, she tried to self-insert her bisexuality onto the character. Waititi co-signed it. However, through the various edits and whatnot, that scene didn't make the cut, which thank God it didn't. But that's all self-insert. That's the narcissism of it all. She has her own set of values, and even though she's not playing herself in this movie, you're playing a character that has already been established. There's mountains upon mountains of source material upon this character. But instead of doing that, you would rather make it about you, or rather caring about that, you want to make it about you, right? And you're using, of course, this your position in being a Marvel comic adaptation. You're using that to try to present yourself or present validation of yourself. And that's, again, it's narcissistic. There's no other way that I can define that. There were things we talked about that we allowed to exist in the characterization, but maybe not be explicit in the film. There's a great shot of me falling back from one of my sisters who's just been slain, which they're talking about this scene here. In my mind, that was my lover, even though it was never even confirmed that way. It was just a dead Valkyrie. Here's my thing. This is why you got a lot of what you've got recently. And it seems to always align with their individual views. So when you see like I think that's the big thing about it. Yes, there are movies that are original, that they inject their own kind of political or social views on. That 100% exists. But when they take something that existed before them, when you often see a lot of that injection of something weird like that, it's because it's usually validating and it's not just actors or actresses, it's producers, directors. They have their own views and they want to use this as a means, as a vehicle, I guess is the proper term, to get that word out there, to get that narrative out there, even if it doesn't make sense to what it is that they're adapting. And that's just such an important thing to note. And I think the difference between someone that truly cares about this stuff and someone that is only using it as a career stepping stone and a way to get their political, social views and themes out there. Okay. I always use this analogy. It will be the equivalent to me being brought on as DC, and DC couldn't pay me enough money. It's just never happened. They couldn't pay me enough money to ever work for that dog crap company. But it would be the equivalent in the event that, I don't know, years back when I would have loved to have done that, if I took Batman, the definitive Batman, Bruce Wayne, in his main continuity, and I turned him into an anarcho-capitalist. You think that'd be stupid, but that's the same exact thing that these guys are doing. It's just in regards to their sexuality. It's the same thing. It's you have who you are. So in this case, Tessa Thompson is bisexual. So she wants the character that she's portraying to be bisexual. So as long as they control it, you're just going to continue to get more of that, because if you think it's just going to be definitely with Disney nowadays, if you think that it's just going to be a case of something like a one-off, like, nah, you'll have some spots where it gets removed, but you also have some spots where it gets removed and then put back in there, and then your movie tanks, like Lightyear. So go for it. Go for it. You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.